Good morning. My name is John Jackson. This is my friend
Ed James.
and we're going to talk citrus today. So, Ed, the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame mission is to recognize people who've made significant contributions and to tell the story of the Florida citrus industry. And we do this several different ways. We have the crate label signs that are around, go to trade shows and gives talks and everything. But one of my favorites one is this. We do oral histories. And so we've got a bunch of them that are online. And so we just sit down and talk. Okay. And there's no agenda. If we had an agenda, it would mess things up anyway. So let me start by whereas I usually go. Tell us a little bit about your history in citrus. I know a little bit, but you got started early. But tell us, how'd you get involved in citrus?
Just everybody in my neighborhood either owned groves or, except my family, or had packing houses or fertilizer plants or what. It was just a citrus town neighborhood.
So this was Leesburg, right?
Leesburg, and just grew up, working in the groves during summers and after schools, and then went into working in packing houses, and then kind of wound up having a grove care business and a packing house of my own, and so it's been up and down.
I remember we were talking that you started working in the packing house after school in high school. So you've been.
Yeah, I would walk down to Lake County citrus sales from the high school, and we'd load 2 semi-trucks every afternoon by hand in wooden crates, and using the old hand trucks. And you rotate from working the hand truck to stacking and did that several years.
So you learned a packing house literally from the ground up. I've been doing a lot of digging to put together a citrus barn and display, and Leesburg became the kind of heart of the citrus industry after the 94-95, as in 1894-95 freeze, when it was located up in St. Augustine, Jacksonville area. But so Leesburg back in 1860 or even earlier than that was really kind of the hub of the citrus industry, and I don't think people really realize how important and critical Leesburg was in the industry. When you were growing up, you worked for citrus sales. That was the Floyd family. Was Herlong had a packing house?
Yeah, I wound up working for Herlong's also, and running their production after the freezes. Wound up buying their packing house, and ran it for a while till the hurricanes. But there were so many packing houses in Leesburg, juice plant and the fertilizer plant, and Herlong was one of the big one, but there were a lot of smaller ones.
Yeah, early on, most of the packing houses were smaller ones, and then as they consolidated and got larger ones, there were still smaller ones, and a lot of them ended up doing what was known as gift fruit. They would have a list and wouldn't pack the volume, but they would pack fancy fruit to be shipped up north to clients and everything else. So when you were working at Mr. Floyd's packing house, is that was a wooden packing house that's still there, or had it been there for a long time?
It had been there for a long time. Mr. Floyd's father started it, and I think Mr. Floyd got it back came back to work after the Depression, was my understanding, where it had gotten run down, and built it way back up to quite an operation. There's a lot of history there. You can always tell the old ones. It was one of the railroad tracks, and I think his grandfather had a lot to do with early citrus, as far as what you said, the Bruce box, and I think some degreening operations and
there was
good stuff.
Yeah, the box, and this is the original, or the first box that citrus was shipped in. That was a little before your time, and it was 1 3/5 bushels wood, and then somewhere they evolved into the slatted boxes that were wire bound, and I thought that BG, the Floyds, used those for quite a while.
He used them till the very end, and he eventually switched to the 5-box plastic bins, but forever we still picked in the 90-pound field boxes.
Now, what about in the packing house? When did he go to cardboard boxes? That was before your time, huh?
No. When I was there, it was still
all wire bound.
All wire bound. You've got this special flip tool to lock them down, and you stack them 4 high, and you grab them with a hand truck and roll them into the semi.
Yeah, the word was that he wasn't. Floyd's didn't modernize, quote, as quick as everybody else did. He did it the old way.
Yeah, last of the Mohicans kind of for a long time. And it worked good. They had a really great label. They only packed, they handled other fruit, but they only packed tangerines. And the Sweetheart label had a really, good reputation. And he put out a good pack out.
Yeah, there were a couple plants like that. Yeah. Dougal Bowie still packed in the wire bounds for a long time over there at the Eustis, and he was heavy into tangerines. Growers find the niche market like that, and and once people knew that if they were getting Floyd's tangerines, they were going to be good quality, and that's the whole story of labels and all that is kind of interesting. So, but we were talking to most of the folks I talked to that were involved in the industry, like you have been. They worked at it, and you probably, it wasn't the most exciting thing that you did, but as you look back at it now, you're going to tell me, I know, right? You're going to tell me, I've really developed a character, and it was such a learning experience, and it was so good for me as I moved on, that having that foundation.
That's absolutely right. And, you don't realize it at the time, but when you look back, and what I was allowed to do and learn from so many mentors out there that most of the guys are not alive now that I learned a lot from, and I think back at how many I was exposed to was really this wonderful thing now.
Well, that whole area over there, Sunnyside on the side of Lake Harris, and then even had grows on up on Lake Griffin on the north and everything else. So it was a bustling citrus area, and the families, the Holloways, were Dick Holloway, who had to make the tough choice: do I go to med school or do I stay in the citrus business? And he made the decision to go to be a doctor. But I think that he probably would have been just as effective as a citrus grower as he was a doctor that was there. So, how were things? What was the downfall? Was it the freezes that pretty well did the?
Well, after the freezes, it was never the same, but it was still a very viable industry. It was coming back real strong, after 83, 85, and then 89. It didn't come back as strong. It was still viable, but it was really a combination of what they say, the 3 Ds: disaster, hurricanes, development, and disease. Yeah. And which one was worst? Who knows? The disease at the tail end was definitely.
Yeah, we've endured a lot. Took some time to recover, but we managed to recover from everything, but we're not recovering from the greening disease. And what's alarming is that there are other industries who have completely gone away, like the American chestnut tree was really prominent during the Depression and everything else, and I think it was a fungus or whatever got into the chestnut and wiped it out. So, but as you moved into the citrus business, was your first venture in grove care? You had a harvesting operation too, didn't you?
Yes, it started out after I got out of school into grove care, and then it went into harvesting and fruit buying and picking and hauling, and and then into packing. And I thought, well, if I'm in all aspects of it, if the price of fruit's down, I'll make it in the harvesting or make it in the packing or vice versa. But when the disease came, it kind of took everything. So it didn't matter how diversified you were.
You were getting vertically integrated, but
yes, but in the same.
But you know, it's like it's great to put a spreadsheet together to say, yeah, I can buy this grove and I can do this and this and this. And there were so many people that were in that situation in the 80s, but you never thought in your spreadsheet that line at the very top that said income would go to zero. Yeah. And when that happens, the spreadsheet falls apart, and you know, and it's a struggle from there. Well, we were talking about you know, the different people and how many mentors that you learned from. Beside the Floyd family, who are some other people that you can remember that you kind of were in awe, and they
a lot of time with Jim Herlong, Steve Johnson. You know, to interview him.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, we need to do an interview with Steve. Steve worked for quite a while for Ben Hill, but he came back up here and everything up here.
And so I did a lot of work with Steve for many years after he came back to Umatilla. And I can't think right off the bat, but a lot of them, when you're harvesting around the states, you tend to meet a lot of different people. And there's been a lot more. Tommy Johnson, I learned a lot from him. He ran the old Blue Key packing houses, and then had his own packing house back in Baum, and he was a wealth of information in the on the packing house side of things. I should have made a list because I think about it from
what was it? What was the role, and how important was Minute Maid in their juice plant in Leesburg? They had to be a very large employer.
Yes, and just the utilities, the employers. It was great jobs and benefits. Very large employer for Leesburg. Another one, Jerry Cloud, the side of Minute Maid. I worked for Jerry for a long time, and the road on the side of Minute Maid is Cloud Street, and that's named after his father. Yeah, he was instrumental in developing FCOJ, and Jerry was another one I learned a lot from.
I understand that Cutrelli sold the plant.
I know they've shut it down completely. They were just tank and packaging, and they've shut it down completely. I haven't heard that yet. I was by their big spray fields on Lake Griffin, and I know they're baling hay out there now. So I haven't heard that, but I wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, the rumor mill that I tapped into said that Romac bought it.
That would not surprise me a bit. They're right there, and they need the. That's probably very true.
So, you know, we were talking at one time there were 5 juice plants in Lake County, and now there are not 5 juice plants running in the state of Florida. So
I remember hauling fruit, and if I couldn't go to Leesburg or Howey, I had to go all the way to Umatilla, Winter Garden. I thought that was just
what a long haul.
Terrible.
Right? Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you're having to go all the way down to Polk County, and I said,
now,
oh my gosh.
Now you're going to Lake Wales. You're going down 27.
Pick groves on number 2 road, and me personally, I could get in the semi truck and pull 5 loads after lunch and be home for dinner. But you know, that doesn't happen. You know, when we're sending a lot of fruit there to Silver Springs and Howey.
So now you are a grower, and I read about you're into cover crops and trying to deal with and cope with greening.
Yep.
So you're not ready to quite throw the towel in yet?
No, I mean, I'm still going to be growing. I'm not on a big acreage. You know, right now I think I'm growing personally about 15 acres. I still do some consulting, but yeah, just trying to build topsoil, any way you can do it affordable, and getting the soluble carbon back in the soil, which we didn't have much to start with. It really is a good defense against against greening. It's not the single silver bullet. There's some other things you got to back away from. I think one of the biggest things that could keep these growers from dropping fruit, and nobody wants to hear it, if they would just switch from Roundup and pre-emergence to gramoxone. The gramoxone is non-systemic at all. It doesn't get in and kill the microbiology and destroy the soil life. But there's very few. In fact, I've worked with a couple growers that just by switching, their fruit stopped dropping. So you still got to fertilize a lot and all that, and I've seen it too many times now. That could be a real game changer, but everybody's afraid of the paraquat being its restricted use pesticide. Yeah.
So when did this this thirst for knowledge? You're not a PhD. You're not a college guy. You just were inquisitive and observations and weren't content to just let things go.
I was buying groves, and the common denominator when greening first came and the groves, the common denominator was always look at the soil. It always was a darker, healthier soil, and the greening wasn't, in the beginning, it wasn't affecting them as bad. And so just started looking at that. And kind of like you've heard there in Ulaha, near my groves in these woods, you had all these wild grapefruit trees. I think one of them made the cover of a magazine, and they were just phenomenal trees that hadn't been touched since the 1962 freeze, was my understanding. And these trees were just phenomenal, and just growing in the wild. So there's been a lot of stories for that, and so I'd go out there and dig, around that tree, and sure enough, you just had all this. Soluble carbon, organic matter, and so I started going down that route. And
well, almost all the early groves were planted in hammocks because
yes.
They didn't suffer from the drought, and so you didn't have that. And B, the soil was so good, and it was an area that was vegetative almost all the time, and so hammocks were great areas. And you have Sunnyside, Treasure Island, and those places that were grown, and all the stories about them, and the seeds that were scattered by the Native Americans or the Indian War soldiers, and then growers went in and budded them by horseback so the deer wouldn't eat the buds, and all those kind of great stories. But those firms, they weren't that out of touch. They needed to plant on good ground where it was going to grow.
A lot of what I learned from was going back and reading Florida Horticultural Society citrus writings from the late 1800s, early 1900s, and there was one quote where they said you need to get organic matter any way you can do it. Beg, borrow, steal. To keep this, and don't keep the grove too clean. If you keep it clean year round, it's not the best practice. After microjets, I think we really went to keeping groves perfect clean. I remember Dr. Pravat, one of my professors, saying that if you want your grove to look like a golf course, you need to go golfing and don't go to the grove. But it is a combination of things. Hopefully, there'll still be a viable industry left. I was doing pretty good till last year, but the two hurricanes kind of took my crop last year, so that wasn't any fun.
Now, I want to go back to the packing house because when you were growing up, the packing house was important, from my opinion, for several reasons, and one was that it provided a great second income for so many families, because after school you could work there, but a lot of the employees were women, right? And
They were, I remember a lot of those women, and they were all mothers, and they could come in after school started and get out of there before school let out. And
yeah, you weren't
and they did well.
Yeah, you weren't packing fruit in September, and you weren't packing fruit in May, and school had already started, so they could go, and it was a great second income, and the dollars that were generated there flowed through the community and everything else, and so it's people don't understand how important that the packing houses really were in all these towns. And one of my favorite stories was that in the Umatilla Fruit Company packing house in Umatilla, that Saturday afternoon when they got through packing, they moved all the boxes back off the upstairs floor, put a piece of plywood over the hole, and the kids in the neighborhood would come up there and they'd have lemonade and do roller skating upstairs in the packing house. Yeah. Were there things like that in Umatilla? I mean, in Leesburg,
I don't recall that too much.
But
I remember, there was, a lot of, not events, but, just us running around the different packing houses and upstairs and sliding down, and, but I don't know of any events really in Leesburg.
Well, and when you go back, you can rest assured that churches, civic organizations, all of those were the ones that were built with citrus dollars, whether it was from the growers or for the packers or even Minute Maid were great citizens and were there that it bolstered and kept the community going. It's a lost story, but we're gonna keep telling it. That's good. As you relate and see the evolution that's taken place, are there many of your colleagues still around in the citrus business? It's hard.
Not in a big commercial, but on small scale.
Yeah, there's
5, 10, 20 acres max. A few friends, I'm still consulting some guys that maybe have 50, 60 acres.
Yeah.
So it's small. My brother-in-law and his brother still doing a little bit of steak, and they keeps a little bit of stuff in Okahumpka, and David's actually replanting some young tangerine trees right as we're speaking.
Hey, we drove up 19. I think Whitaker Satsuma Grove here.
That's a red naval block right there on 19. That's that little house there. Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Yeah. And Lake Region's down there on the corners. They got some trees in there with the tents over them and everything else.
Little Mineola block there.
Yeah, and even down Cherry Lake has got some stuff planted.
Yes.
Have you seen Cherry Lake's greenhouse operation?
I have not, but I know they were putting it in, and I know that they were looking toward or working hard on trying to improve the soil in those greenhouses also, as far as getting some carbon and boosting the soil in there, and they're kind of going down that direction.
Well, evidently, grapefruit do really well in the greenhouse environment. And I heard this is kind of interesting, that they had to juice all the grapefruit in their greenhouse this past year. And the reason they had to juice it was that the thrip damage was so bad.
Yes.
And supposedly, I'm kind of out of touch, but thrips like white. And they are theorizing that the thrips were attracted to the white shade house, and obviously the shade house wasn't totally impermeable. If thrips can get in, you would almost think that the psyllid could get in. But anyway, can you imagine having 600 boxes to the acre of red grapefruit and you had to juice them?
Wow. Yeah, but the juice price is pretty good too.
Yeah, I guess so. Supply and demand. So we've got several different things. You're working at improving the soil. Some people are putting out antibiotics and they're injecting the tree. Others are hopeful that we can have a somewhat resistant variety in rootstocks, and we're going. But so far we have no silver bullet, and it's going to be difficult to recover the infrastructure if we can ever go. But there's still some land available.
Yeah, and my biggest concern too is we lose the last juice planter, the last packing house. That's not going to be good. That's really hard to bring back. I mean, hopefully there's going to be something that's going to keep the growers, going to some degree.
Yeah, well, you can still have open land on Dewey Robbins Road, but we're not going to have 100,000 acres back in the county. So.
No, it won't be. But there's still, can be. And there are people out there with money that would be happy to plant if they knew they could have a tree that would last, 20 years or 15 at least, or whatever. And so, we just have to keep going. I don't, it's going to get interesting. I did put in my own little packing line in case I have been shipping the previous years, just retailing my own fruit, because there are other issues now, because if you can't get the harvesters unless you're big enough to have the H2A guys, and the small guys, it's not feasible. So there's still plenty of challenges, but I still hope, I think there still could be a good possibility of a future.
A niche market where you can fit in. What, tell me what, as we were sharing stories, where were you in '83 and '85 and '89 with the freezes? How do you remember those nights? Growers never forget.
I remember going in the packing house. Was that the Christmas one, I believe, '83?
Yep.
And it had froze the fire suppression system, and the whole inside of the packing house just looked like a ice mountain. So I really had a good job before '83. Production manager, and harvesting supervisor type of thing, and I was riding around in a new truck and a telephone and a good salary and a house, and then I went from doing that to running the chainsaw crew every day, and fixing chainsaws at night, and running the crew the next day. So after that summer, I went back to school to get a degree. I was actually 85. I was in college at the time, so. I remember going out there in Polk County and helping a lot of people were picking up the fruit off the ground, and I think it was a $1 or 5-gallon bucket, and after classes we'd go, get the stuff off the ground that wasn't hanging in the tree. And things got real good again when I got out of school '86, and we're going real good until '89 came. So.
Yeah, it's just hard to believe that growers could persevere that much, and then we go through that, and we go through the hurricanes, and then we got the greening and everything else. So we'll see what happens and where we end up. But I'm hopeful that we'll evolve into a market and that isn't as large as it was. But if we can get to the point where you can grow 350 boxes to the acre, you can make a pretty good living.
Do real well, yeah.
And that was just marginal and used to be.
Maybe not now with so many other countries, but citrus started. It was a delicacy in the beginning. I mean, it was a Christmas present to get an orange or tangerine, and hopefully it doesn't get back to that. I mean, growing up, we always had it was concentrate, but there was always orange juice. In the refrigerator, I think we had more orange juice than we had milk or other things, or Cokes. Those were the delicacies, where the orange juice was.
Well, we went through the whole evolution of it being an oversupply, and when you're producing 200 million boxes and trying to sell it, and now it's the other direction where we can't get enough to to worry about having to advertise. Now our biggest problem, I guess, is keeping our price so that they don't switch from orange juice to another product.
Product.
So I have to tell you that don't tell anybody, but I love Florida's natural passion fruit drink, and I got hooked on that when I was in Africa, and they serve passion fruit drink every morning for breakfast.
Oh wow!
And it's pretty good. Now, of course, Florida's Natural puts a little orange juice in it, a little passion fruit concentrate, and some sugar and everything else to sell it. But it's a way of surviving, so we gotta find a way to get by and do it. So there's still some people who are persevering out there, and
I think so. There's some good, some of the government money should help a little bit in the tree programs, for replant and so forth. So there's still hope.
There's still hope in there, and I think that there'll still be enough people like you that are going to hang in there and are going to persevere. But Ed, the history is so great, and I know that that it's easy to look back and you have fond memories. But I'm always admired folks like you that worked hard, observed, picked up things, shared ideas, and this is something else that I think made citrus, and I don't know whether it's unique, but I think it speaks very highly that we would have meetings here, and we'd all sit around the table, and if you were doing something, someone said, "Hey, Ed, I noticed at your block over there, you didn't have much drop, and you wouldn't say, "I'm sorry, oh yeah, it's looking pretty good," and that's it. People shared.
Everything was shared, and no secrets. That was a lot of helping each other out.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to do this? Have you done? And people would interact and help each other out. And I'm sure in the fresh fruit packing house business that if you were at Herlong's and another packing house was short about 50,000 cartons and you had them, yeah, I got some navels, and next time around, you'd get some tangerines from them, and so it wasn't a cutthroat business.
No, there was a lot of that went around, and from the juice plants also would swap, and if you need some solids here, take it to here, swap them out. Even if under a certain contract, you could still move it around, and there was a lot of working together in the industry.
Well, I've enjoyed it and met so many fabulous people, and we were talking about the changes driving down to Groveland this morning, and here's Cherry Lake over here, and Dick Toole, who is up there looking down on us, he's just laughing that his grove is now this beautiful subdivision north of Groveland, and they've what I see, they pushed out something today that Lewis's Grove is gone now, right there.
Oh yes,
they just started pushing trees and moving dirt around there.
Yeah, that's all been approved. That's not the south side. I'm not sure about it, but that's all subject for maybe a Publix, I'm hearing, and then houses behind the Publix. The Drake Point, the homestead. They've cleared all that, and they're running cows on there right now, but I'm sure that's slated for development too.
Well, the rumor mill that I heard was that when they were doing work down there, they came across an Indian burial ground.
I heard some of that.
Boy, that'll shut you down.
Yeah, I heard some of that, and I've also heard the cowboy out there is a friend of mine, and he said, well, they told him to plan on keeping cows there for a while, so. So I don't know any specifics, but I had heard that rumor. Yeah.
Maybe Kathy Lewis knew what was really going on. That's why she moved. But that's a classic place, isn't it? That Drake Point has been one of the fabulous places for growing citrus on the south side of the lake. Mm-hmm. After a while, where the fruit is, and I'd slip down there, and Frank had a fabulous little Temple orange block right there on the lake.
I know exactly where.
And I love Temple oranges, so I'd go down there, and then John Heist had a navel grapefruit grove in Lake Jim that I used
that one too.
I used to swing by and get navel grapefruit.
Yeah.
If John would have been a better marketer, he could have done a great job with that, because that was a beautiful piece of fruit. It always got good size, and it was excellent quality, and it was a, kind of a white grapefruit. Hell, they're making a resurgence, right? People looking for white grapefruit. I used to have people want to know where they could find a Dunkin', but I wouldn't fight through the seeds with a Dunkin'.
Well,
you say it was a better quality.
I'm actually,
you growing some Dunkins?
I'm growing one in my yard, and it's doing phenomenal.
Yeah.
I did put it kind of in a strong carbon-based soil, but it hasn't been sprayed, hasn't been fertilized, and it's doing unbelievable. And I'm still trying my own little research. I did something different. I didn't plan to leave it there. I was going to transplant it, but it was in a tree pot, and I cut the bottom of the pot out, and I ruffled up the roots and buried it with about this much of the pot sticking out of the ground, and it sat there for a year and didn't do anything, and then it just blew up this year like I can't believe. And I'm thinking that that pot forced the taproot to go down deep, which you don't see deep taproots anymore. I remember pushing out trees after the 80s freezes, and with a big loader, those taproots would go forever. And after greening, you pushed out trees, and there wasn't much taproot. But so I know there's a lot of seeds in the Dunkin', but if a niche market,
I wouldn't get too excited about that.
I know seedless is the future.
Yeah, I just don't think, a few seeds, but all the seeds of the Dunkin', that's it. Like trying to sell a pineapple orange as a fresh fruit.
Well, and if you're juicing it,
yeah,
versus
sure,
versus packing it, that's
well, and we have so many different varieties that are coming into now.
Yes.
Drove to Lake Yale a couple of days ago, and Chuck Allison and Whitakers have planted Ori. Have you had an experience with Ori?
Yes, I've marketed some of them. I haven't grown any, but I was selling, and that's a fabulous. Anybody that tastes an Ori, that's all they want.
So when does it come off?
They come off January.
Oh, it's a late. It's closer to a Murcott time period.
No, it's ahead of a Murcott, and they can be earlier because the block I was familiar and doing some marketing out of, I was reselling them. They have to spot pick them, so
just like the tango,
like the old Dancy tangerine used to be. We'd pick them 3 times before we'd clean them up. But that's a fabulous eating Ori. If you can
I know where I'm going to get them then, because I thought I drove by there and I couldn't see any on the tree, but
Yes.
But if it's a later one, they'll start to color up here once we get some cool
No, it's
weather.
it's not bright and early. I mean, they may get some in December, but no, it's not a Robinson. But by far, hands down, I mean, everything, the taste, the flavor, they're seedless. You can peel it like an old Dancy tangerine.
Now it came from Israel, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Well, it's fabulous how we can go in that direction and get some of these things, and what we've been able to do through genetics and all the plant breeding, but we still haven't found what that gene is for greening tolerance. But they'll work on it. They'll find something. I don't know how successful they're doing with those Hamlin. They're not whatever they're calling the early fruit across from Record Buck Farms that Bill Lennon has that block. He's got about 40 trees, I think, that Gary England's been working with from escapes.
Yeah, escapes.
And I
that
remember
may be the answer.
I had Ed Stover give me a long lecture on why escapes would not be the solution to greening, and it was way over my head. Ed was a brilliant scientist, but Buster Pratt was convinced that the solution to every problem in the citrus was an escape. When you look at burrowing nematodes, we survived burrowing nematodes because we found that Carrizo and Milam, you could get an escape tree. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I remember Frank Lewis, I had lots of chats with him, but after the freezes, he always would want to know why this one tree survived the freeze and everything around it, froze.
Well, I believe that was not a genetic issue. And the reason that I say that is that Chris Blanton was sitting across the desk from me in '83, and he had 600,000 or 700,000 trees in that nursery. 19 lived. And there was a guy from South Florida that came up here, and I can't remember his name, and he got with Chris, and he thought these are the trees that the industry's gonna live with. And he took those trees and propagated from them. I took some trees, over to George Onlowski at USDA, and when they put into a freeze chamber,
No difference.
no different. They did. So it was not
Something physical.
Yeah, it was not a genetic
Yeah.
deal. It was it at least could be reproduced. So the solution to the cold was not genetics. It was Farina's elevated microsprinklers.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
That was the solution.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that freezes wouldn't hurt us again, because I believe that those people in Georgia have found that, I don't care if you're putting out 30 gallons an hour, you're going to have to deal with the cold weather, and whether they're going to be successful or not, I don't know.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
So you got challenges all the way around. Well, I'm fascinated as where we're going to go, what's going to happen, and the industry is extremely fortunate to have people like you that won't give up, that are going to keep butting their head against the wall to try to find out. And I think that that we're going to find that in some of these things that what works here doesn't necessarily work here, but you can find you can find a way to at least live and survive and do it. And I know that if you weren't having fun, you wouldn't be doing it.
No, you got to like it. And I still enjoy it, and I'm gonna stay in it. I mean,
I know you do.
I'm not gonna borrow money to stay in it, but I am gonna stay in it one way or another. And
you've got too much of your heart invested in it, and that's what it's all about. It's the people that care about it, and you'd like to make some money, but you're not doing this so that you can be a multimillionaire.
No.
You're doing this because you want to see a solution. You want to find an answer.
I thought I was 35 years ago.
Yeah, but now you got your priorities squared away, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you enjoy that. Well, do you have any family? Is the next generation in citrus, or?
No, I've got 3 boys, and they all love it. But I kind of pushed them away from it, and I'm glad I did at the time, because there just wouldn't have been room. And second, third one, they would have definitely gone the direction, but I could see where things were going, and so I'm glad I did, because now they 2 out of 3 of them can about buy and sell me out of their shirt pockets.
Yeah.
They're doing well.
But I'm sure that they enjoy seeing you, and that they know what's going on.
Yeah,
And
when they got to experience a little, they were the last to get the experience inside of a packing house. They got the experience at the Grove, and all their friends coming out, and that's where you went on the weekends, and you camp out at the Grove.
Well, they can say, Granddaddy really isn't crazy. He's been doing this for a long time, and he just can't stop. It's just like if I took that video game away from your grandkids, they would go crazy. If you couldn't get out in the Grove and do that, you'd be lost. And so it's kind of a.
And they all, from nieces and nephews, they all learned how to drive out there at 12, 11, 13, so by the time they get on the road, they've had a lot of Grove driving experience, and so they'll have wonderful memories, even though they're not in it.
Yeah, it's been a part of your life, and it's been a part of so many lives, and when the next generation looks back, and they'll see the how important it was, and the impact that it had. I'm a late bloomer. I didn't grow up in citrus. I was a city boy in Orlando, so and I didn't get involved in citrus until I realized that I was not going to be an engineer because me and Miss Thermodynamics and statics didn't get along. But I loved the outside and the agricultural, and the Lord steered me here to this building. And I had.
Well, but for being a late bloomer, you went all the way to the top
I
as
had
far as knowledge and helping the industry.
I had 38 years of fantastic contacts and interaction, and I still love it. And I'm going to build a barn over at Barberville.
Yes.
We're going to get that going, and we're going to put some artifacts in there. We're going to tell the story, and we're not going to let it pass away. Thank you,
John.
We
thank
enjoyed.
you. This is wonderful what you're doing, keeping the history.
Well, I
alive.
got friends like you helping me out.